Great morning, everyone. Excited to have you here for our BMG. Today's topic is really interesting. I think that there are three facets to this, and they are very deep. Probably concepts you may or may not have heard of before, but everyone should have received a PDF. Hayden, if you didn't get that, let me know. I'll make sure you get it. I'm about to pull it up on the screen really quickly, though.
Cool.
But again, this will be our roadmap for today. So really wanted to dive in by sharing an interview with you. Okay. Oops. Hold on. I can't admit. Where'd you go, Bob?
I'm right here. No, that was a mistake. I was trying
Okay.
to open up the PDF.
Okay. So this interview was really simple. There was a gentleman who went around the world and did an interview with the top 10% income earners, the top 10% income earners in the world. And this is all based on his interview. Before we dive into that, I want to share this Nelson Mandela quote. There is no passion to be found in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. When we talk about the three keys of life, there are going to be three elements here. And again, this is told by the top 10%. So often if we go out into society, we see things like hustle, grind. These are not the words used at all by the top income earners. The three words that they used were joy, full engagement, and confidence. And I want to share these with you today because you can implement one of these three or all of these three to get tremendous results moving forward. So really quickly, and you don't have to share this with the group if you don't want to, but really quickly, I'd love for you to go through these three terms, joy, full engagement, confidence, and rate where you are right now in life. 1 being absolutely terrible, non-existent. 10 being absolutely perfect, wouldn't change a thing. So again, go through really quickly. Give yourself a number for each of these three: joy, full engagement, and confidence. And whenever you're done, just give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Any of these you want to share, Bob?
Well, I give myself a 10 on joy. That I am always feeling, yes. And I know joy exists in every moment, so I know it's accessible in every moment. Fully engaged. I can tell you I am hearing Nelson right now. I am not fully engaged in everything that I know that I'm capable of. And it has to do with the third one, which is confidence. Such a tricky one. How do I get the confidence to be fully engaged in what I'm capable of when I haven't even expressed everything that I'm capable of? Right? So it's that catch 22. I'll be confident after I've done it. No, I've got to be courageous in order to be to do it, to become fully engaged. I like to use courage instead of confidence to be fully engaged. The confidence will come afterwards. And so that's why I rate those as 8, fully engaged and confident. I know I'm not fully engaged. You may ask, how
Excellent.
do I?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to the John C. Maxwell quote. There are two types of people: the type of person that waits until they feel a certain way to act, and the type of person that acts so they will feel a certain way. You know, the problem is if you're the first of the two, it's very difficult to get anything done. So top performers, they're going to do the things they don't want to do because they know it's going to make them feel a certain way afterwards, right? Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Let's go.
I put a 9 for joy. I'm very happy with where I am in life and my family and the growth that my family is experiencing. But I also think I'm hesitant to use 10 on anything, as if I put a 10, there's not room for improvement. I always want to improve. For full engagement, I put an 8. I feel like I'm operating at a pretty high capacity right now. Probably overextending myself a little bit, and that's probably why my joy is not a 10.
Yeah.
And then finally, confidence. I put 9 for confidence. Again, I'm confident with where I am, and I'm confident in stepping into the unknown, which is a big part of my journey right now. So
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you for sharing. And I think you bring up another big point is that And not picking on you, Bob. This is, more a general statement for everybody. But if we look at that 10 section, I'd have to agree with you, Hayden. It's that concept of, well, if we feel that we can improve or get any better, then we've kind of missed the mark, right? Because that is part of the evolution of humanity, is that we should never reach perfection. We can strive for it, but it's not real to actually achieve that perfection, because we should always be growing and evolving and moving forward, right? And again,
Well,
that's
I'm feeling picked on. So 10 is arbitrary.
that's
You
true.
you know there is, I have had 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and infinity also. So right now it's a 10. 10 is not the ultimate.
Hey,
So
Well
if
played,
you're at
Bob.
full joy, let's go. That's the name
Well
of the
played.
game. You're the person I want to be around, Bob. So I love it. I love it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Real quick, just moving into the next part, unless anybody else wanted to share. No worries. All right. So for joy, I'd love to hear if anybody has a definition they'd like to share with the group, what you would define as joy. What do you think, Miles? You usually have pretty good definitions for stuff.
Yeah, it's making me think. I think joy is, I keep wanting to lean towards the word enjoy for defining joy, but that kind of feels like cheating. So finding happiness in all of the moments that pass by, like enjoying the essence of things, I guess.
I love it. I love it. And that kind of brings up this perspective shift. Again, we're talking about the top 10% income earners. And one of the things that separates these income earners is their ability to shift their perspective, or in other words, change your state of being. Meaning you could get bad information, something that's not conducive or unpleasant, and not let it affect you, not view it as the victim and say, this happened to me, but instead this happened for me, right? And that kind of goes back to your definition there. But again, I really like how Les Brown said this. If you are not developing yourself, you are not growing. And if you are not growing, joy is unattainable. And if joy is unattainable, what is the point of living? So I thought that was a really cool breakdown, is that, again, in order to get to that place, we should be evolving and growing and developing and helping other people, and we will sustain that joy. So I think it's really important to think about, what activity in life do you gain the most joy from performing? And how can you use this to positively impact other people? That's how you're going to get your fulfillment. Any questions before we shift? Okay, so the last two are going to be the harder of the two. The joy, we all understand what joy is, right? And these are actually going to lead to that element of joy. So I'm really curious if anybody would like to share, are there any moments in your day-to-day where you are fully engaged in what you're doing? Or is there a task that you feel like it's timeless for you? What are those things? I'd love to hear.
For me, there are two activities that I do where, and three activities where I feel just full engagement. My mind has nowhere else to go. It doesn't desire anything else in the moment. That's climbing, roasting coffee, and I really do just love discovery meetings, like initial calls with prospects. Just the innocent curiosity of it is really fun. But those are the only three moments or actions where I think I understand and truly feel fully engaged.
And that's remarkable, because we've talked about this, Miles, but you can leverage both of those. You can leverage climbing. You could be an instructor. You could just go out with a group of buddies. You could shoot out a meetup, and you can have that full engagement there. The roasting, I mean, that makes a ton of sense too. You can share that product with other people, and that's how we devote our energy and output and then help other people using that effort and energy, right? So I love that. Anyone else, any moments where you're fully engaged? Bob?
So the thing that I play with in this whole concept here is that it's not the activity that makes me feel fully engaged. It's being fully engaged in the activity that I'm doing at the moment.
Mm.
So my fulfillment comes from being 100% Bob in every moment, no matter what I'm doing. So, I mean, that's the flip side of it. I'm with Miles. I mean, when I'm crocheting or I'm with a client for the first time, or I'm completely with a client, that's fulfilling because it's the act of doing something where I'm feeling fulfilled. But how do I feel fulfilled before I do anything? How am I fulfilled in my being so that no matter what I do, it's fulfilling? It's something to play with.
Yeah, well, there's
You
an
get off the
element of authenticity that you mentioned, right? It's like for me to be fully engaged, I just have to authentically show up as myself. And I think that this is such a powerful concept because we're in a world right now where there's this whole concept of income arbitrage, which you may or may not have heard of. But the point is that often people go through life and they're not 100% authentic because they're trying to emulate somebody else. And it gets to that point where you're emulating so much that you actually lose your own identity or lose your own authenticity. And in those moments, how can you possibly be fully engaged? Because you're not being true to yourself. Happens all the time, by the way. So yeah, great point. And that does make sense, Bob. Absolutely. Matt, good morning, sir. Good to see you. I'd love to hear from you, brother. What's a activity or moment where you feel you are fully engaged?
Well, it varies. Are you talking personally or professionally?
Either one.
Okay. Well, when I'm basically the poor version of Bill Gates and I have my pocket protector, at that point I'm fully engaged. If I'm fucking, at that point I'm fully engaged. So, you know, it's this is what happens when you're half asleep. So,
It's okay. We all went there.
but did anybody actually say it though?
We were waiting for you to say it, Matt. We knew you would.
Of course, all like for example, Keegan always says snotty marks. It's like I'm rolling today. So, but it's really anything I'm passionate about. And so, like Keegan was just referring to people that are so fake. They're almost like Eminem, where they lose themselves. And so you want people that are genuine. And for example, like in the last group I was just at, they said, well, what coffee mugs do you have? I told them I have a sheet mug. Meh. You know, so I have the sheet mug, and then I sit there and also have my nerdy, you know, coffee cup. And even though I don't drink coffee, I'm naturally caffeinated. The last thing you want me on is caffeine. So, but ultimately, and Bob knows this, and Keegan knows as well, I am very different. And I don't try to be somebody I'm not at this point. And Bob and I had a good portion of this conversation, you know, one-on-one, which is great last week. And so ultimately, you can't sit there and hide behind a facade forever. You know, at some point, your personality is going to pull a Cyndi Lauper and your true colors are going to come out. And so you want people that are authentic because you'll sense their sincerity. More importantly, it's not just being sincere with themselves, it's also being sincere with you. So if they're not sincere with you, at that point, you're shortchanging yourself for how you should be treated, and you know, the passion that you should have for yourself. So ultimately, it's either that or animals or nature or music technology. Those are all things that I'm passionate about, and that's what transfers to other people.
Yeah, and you bring up several points. I mean, you know, again, when we're talking about this full engagement, the whole concept of this is that this was an interview conducted by the top income earners. And how could you get somebody else to believe in your product or service if you're not fully engaged in that product or service? Doesn't matter what it is. It could be speaking, could be coaching, could be IT services. It doesn't matter. The point is, if you're not fully engaged, how are you going to convey that message to the person on the other side? And so full engagement is something that when we are fully engaged, people feel that energy. right? They're fired up. And that could be, you could be on a stage speaking, but if you're fully engaged, everybody in the audience is going to be fully engaged as well. So I think that the next part is really the heft of the full engagement is that we must realize there are two primary factors that deter our focus or full engagement. Whether this is working with your family, whatever it is, there are distractions that pull you away from being fully engaged. And so first, I think it's very important to know what your mission is. Now, this could be personally or professionally, they're probably tied together, but the point is you got to know what your mission is first. And when you're very clear on your mission, look at these two areas that are going to distract you. So the two parts that are going to distract your full focus are sensory distractions and emotional distractions. And we've talked about this slightly before. A sensory distraction is easy. Look, if you're looking at this screen right now and you're reading any part of this, you have to blank out the margins or the other words around that text. That's sensory focus, right? Sensory distraction would be the opposite of that. That would be you're trying to read a sentence and all you can see is that word confidence. You can't even focus on the next word. That would be a sensory distraction. That one's simple. The emotional distractions are the more daunting of the two because they're a lot more difficult to tackle. Not only this, but as humans, we typically have multiple emotions or reactions occurring at one time. It's not just one. We're not just happy, right? There are things that lead up to that. So here's the easiest way to differentiate this in an emotional distraction. And this is how most people view this. And I've shared this before. I think it's a good imagery, but has anybody ever used those Matchbox cars and the track? You know what I'm talking about? Where you'd have the little track and you'd put the car on it and then it would have that little spinner and then the car would just shoot off. And then what happens? It starts to lose momentum and then it comes back and it hits that little trigger and it picks back up again. That is the perfect example of an emotional loop. That's exactly what happens is we are fueled by this emotional response. We're very reactionary. It fires out and then it starts to slow down. We get distracted. We think about something else. And then what happens? We start to think about it again and all those emotions flare back up and then it shoots us right around the track. So my point is that if you want to be fully engaged, you must, first of all, know what the mission is. Because if you don't know what that end result is, if you don't know what you're headed towards, if you don't know how you want to impact people, how can you be clear on that end result? How can you hit that target? When you know that mission, you must then realize that, hey, look, guys, there are two things that are going to pull me away from fully contributing here. And that is going to be the sensory distractions and the emotional distractions. Any thoughts, questions, comments here? So the big thing, go ahead.
One thing, something that I picked up from Bob, and then I feel like Matt kind of got to it too. And then looking back at the distractions, it feels like there's this element of full engagement that is willed. Like there's an intentional willing of being fully engaged and overcoming or bypassing distractions. And I guess I just wanted to vocalize that. I've never thought about it in that way before.
That's a stellar point, and it's very interesting you bring this up because I heard this a few days ago. I believe it was from Jim Rohn, but he said that, believe it or not, most people actually seek distractions subconsciously. We see, and that goes to your point, is like, okay, well, is this within our will? Are we willfully seeking distractions? Why would somebody do that? Well, because subconsciously there are certain things that we don't believe are attainable. We don't believe we deserve them. There's doubt, there's fear, there's inferiority, there's undeservingness. And this is the perfect transition into confidence. And so we're going to break those down. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I think that it does bring up a very big point is people seek distractions. Bob?
So there's another expression that I've heard and I've used and I understand. It's action for distraction. So very often we fill up our day with actions that really don't meet our mission, we just fill ourselves up with to-dos that take us away from what our core value is, and for exactly the same reason you're talking about, because you're afraid of the success, and so you just fill up your day, action for distraction, and it really, all those actions are taking you away from being fully engaged. I know I'm very capable of doing that. I'll fill up my day just so I feel like I'm busy and I'm productive when I haven't gotten anything done. Whereas I would have been so much better not doing anything and just being in the state of being, of knowing that I'm okay. I don't need the action for distraction, or there's so many things that I'm doing to keep me away. And all of those things are all internal things too. All of the thoughts, I'm not good enough, like you said, or I don't deserve that success. So let me go do something else. Let me go do something else instead of the thing that I know I'm supposed to be doing. Action for distraction.
Well said. Oh, spot on. Yeah, I think that often we get caught up in performing tasks, not performing results. And those are two very different things. You know, sometimes we do tasks to distract us, right? Just like to Bob's point, and results are contributing to what I call the queen bee resource. So I know, Bob, I know some of you know this concept, but I want to share it very quickly. A queen bee resource, this is more specific to the work environment than anything else. But queen bee resource is quite simple. It is to say, by the way, has anybody in here kept bees before? I've always wanted to do that. I think that's so cool.
I would love to.
Yeah, me too. We have a lot of bear around here though. But the queen bee resource is a simple concept. Okay. If you look at a beehive, it performs many different tasks, right? They have to collect the pollen, they have to build the hive, they have to protect the queen. You know, the list goes on and on. They do all of these things. But what you must realize is if the queen dies, the entire hive dies too. So although they have all these various tasks they must perform, their primary effort and resources are contributed to protecting the queen. The same is true with your business. There is a primary resource that generates the most results for you, the most output. And this is different than just completing tasks. To Bob's point, is that, look, no, it's not just let's do tasks. Let's focus on the actual results. And in order to get there, we need to know what our primary resource is, right? For example, if Hayden is a phenomenal speaker, well, guess what? There are multiple tasks that go into being a speaker. It's not just you being on the stage, right? You've got to prepare your script. You have to know the audience. There are so many other things that go into it. But guess what? The most value comes from when you're up stage, standing there talking to everybody, right? So again, that full engagement, the biggest thing is, okay, am I being distracted right now? And if so, why? I know moments in my life where I've been, whatever the situation was, when I'm fully engaged and I'm on fire, you know, people, they love it, right? There's this quote here. This is one of my favorite quotes, and this is full engagement. If you light yourself on fire, people will come to watch you burn. That's being fully engaged, right? Any other points, questions, comments before we shift to the next part? Okay, so confidence, and this is where you'll see the biggest inhibitors. Now, of the 3 points, this one is probably going to be the deepest, okay? These come up all the time. These are subconsciously built through experiences from childhood. Everybody faces these. These are the 3 major inhibitors of anyone's confidence. So number 1, doubt and fear. Number 2, guilt and unworthiness. And number 3, inferiority and undeservingness. There's a story that I like to share in regards to the fear and doubt. Some of you have heard this already, but years ago, my mom, and she still works for this company, but years ago, my mom worked for a insurance agency. They did home health auto. Often they would have to go take actual pictures of the home front and back to ensure that it was insurable. Nobody wanted to do this. This is in Maryland, and majority of these properties are in Baltimore. Baltimore's not a very nice city. So I would go out and take these pictures for them. One day I'm walking down the street in Baltimore and I meet this young man and he starts to tell me about this story. And again, some of you are going to laugh because you've heard this, but has anybody in here seen Step Brothers? You know, there's like where they have the two paths and they go, oh, well, we can go down the short path, but there's that kid Gardaki, or we can go down the long path. And he's like, but Brendan, that's like an hour walk. Why would we not just go the 15 minutes? He's like, all right, let's do it. And they go and get beat up by the kids, right? The point is that they had a choice of two paths. And this is similar to the story that this young gentleman in Baltimore is talking to me about. And he says, look, I have two paths that I can travel. One long path gets me home. The other path, much shorter, but there's a pit bull that chases me every time. So he goes down this path like he always did in the past. And as he's walking down the sidewalk, the pit bull turns the corner and starts to chase him just like every other time in the past. And he gets halfway down the sidewalk and he sees this loose brick. He grabs it and turns to strike the dog. And as soon as the dog opens his jawline, this guy realizes the dog has no teeth, not one. This is a perfect analogy for fear. Often we create emotional interpretations on a particular outcome because we saw that happen in the past and we just assume it's going to happen the same way. So we build all this fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, whatever you want to call it up. And then we face that moment and we realize we never even had to be worried about it in the first place. So often if you are experiencing a form of doubt and fear, it is a convoluted emotional interpretation that has occurred in your life. So I would challenge you to get to the actual root of it. The best way to do this, by the way, is to simply isolate just one emotion. Isolate one emotion when you're feeling doubt or fear and say, why am I feeling this way? Where does this come from? Maybe it's a memory that happened when you were in the second grade. You know, maybe it's something a teacher said to you in school. Maybe it's a way a relationship ended. Whatever it is, there is an origin of it. And when you get to that origin, you take control over it and it therefore cannot affect you the same. And every time you face it, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Guilt and unworthiness comes up all the time as well. Often, I mean, we see this all the time. I see brilliant people that have skills to literally change the world, and yet they don't think they're deserving of that success. They almost feel guilty for achieving a certain level of success. We see this in families all the time. You'll see a family that's in a certain income class, an economic class, upper, middle, lower. And, you know, for example, I used to have this friend and his family, they were immigrants from El Salvador, and they came over from El Salvador and they lived in this tiny little apartment. And the father worked his butt off, one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. His father was offered a promotion and like a tripled income and turned it down. And his son, Josh, was devastated. He was like, Dad, we've been living in this apartment. Why would you turn this opportunity down? And I'll never forget it. His dad literally just simply didn't think he deserved it. Here's the opportunity that you've been waiting for handed over to you, and you don't accept it because you don't think you deserve it, because there's some guilt around, you know, how your family lives in South America versus this opportunity that you have in front of you. The point is that guilt or unworthiness can talk us out or distract us from the results that we deserve. And then the third one is that inferiority or the undeservingness part. It's, you know, goes back to the same point. If we feel inferior or we don't feel like we've earned a certain accolade, then we don't follow through. You know, and these are devastating. These are devastating. Any questions or thoughts here, guys?
I'll go. Actually, no, Bob can go first. I'll wait my turn.
Thank you, Matt. But very quickly, the thing about all of these, for me, it really doesn't matter where it came from. What you're telling me through all of this is they don't exist. Right? So, I mean, it just exists in my mind. So the thing about the dog, right? There was nothing to be afraid of except for my past experience. That doesn't exist anymore. Get over it. The guilt, the unworthiness, it doesn't exist. Of course, it doesn't, it just doesn't exist. That's just something I make up. And same thing about inferiority, you know, it just, and undeservingness. I deserve everything that I'm given. It doesn't matter. This is all, it's all just made up. So I don't listen to it, even though it's real. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have any, or I have all of these, but I don't listen to it. It's not real. That's what I'm hearing, is it's not real. And if I just don't pay attention to it, it doesn't exist.
We'll do a little recap at the end, but great points, Bob. Thank you. Matt?
As soon as I saw this on this page when I printed it out yesterday, I'm like, oh fuck. So because this is, I see this and I cringe. And so literally everything, all three is my kryptonite, and not Superman or Three Doors Down. So this is something I have seriously struggled with my whole life. And it is definitely fucked me. There's no loving dildo. There's no no KY. You know, there's no Vaseline. It just it's something it has been a huge factor in my life, and everything that is going on for those three, I feel on a daily basis. And so it's tough to break out of that rut once you're in it. And so with me and my upbringing, it's hard not to be cognizant of these things. And so, like when you were describing the first one about doubt and fear, isolating one emotion, you know, I was jotting notes down. So these are all three things that I have to work on a daily basis. And sometimes I do well, sometimes I fail. So, but I just wanted to share with you that this is something I definitely need to work on. So
Absolutely. Sorry, Ash, for the language. No, so two things that stand out here is, one is that, you know, back to Bob's point, you're absolutely right. These are the patterns that we reinforce, right? And so it could be the truth or not, but we emotionally reinforce it over and over again. And if we reinforce it, that becomes our truth. The example I always use here is you could have two identical twins go through the exact same experience and come out with completely different interpretations of that experience. What that tells us is that the experience isn't the end result, it's the way that we interpret that data. And then we reinforce those patterns based on the conclusions that we make about other people, about ourselves, and about life. So absolutely, you know. Another point is, it's so fascinating to me because the world is the way we view it, you know, and you can take an extremist in, let's say, religion, for example. If somebody's a diehard Taoist, they are going to live and die by their beliefs. Now compare that person to a Christian. Does it make one of them wrong and the other right? Absolutely not. It's just that they believe a certain thing wholeheartedly. And guess what? That's their world because they believe it, right? And that's true with all things. So yeah, great points. And anybody else, by the way?
Yeah, in that and belief systems, I feel like the language that we use is so important when it comes to confidence. And that's in the self-talk, that's in the way we perceive things and the way that we unravel situations. But I think like two phrases that have been really helpful for me are changing that what if and why me to why not me and even if. So like, what if everything goes wrong and this doesn't work out? Well, even if this doesn't work out, everything is going to be fine because I'll find a way to make it better. And well, why me? Why, you know, for the unworthiness, like why me? Why not me? It's going to be somebody, and why shouldn't it be me? So in terms of belief systems, I think they're just really subtle patterns in speech and thought with the language that we use with ourselves that is, you know, very, very powerful in this space.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up the concept of a belief system, because I would say that just based on looking at the group, I'd say everybody is probably in a chair right now. So let's take this example. If you were to sit up nice and straight in your chair, right? You know, head up, chest out, shoulders down the side. You can think of your chair as your belief system. The chair is supporting you. It's supporting your belief system. And just for sake of argument, let's just say it has 4 legs. Okay, your chair has 4 legs. If that chair is supporting your belief system, those 4 legs, though, that's your evidence, that's your supporting data that helps you maintain that belief system. Well, guess what? If you were to sit in that chair and somebody came by and kicked one of the legs out, is there a chance this chair could continue standing? Yeah, it might be a little wobbly and you lean to one side, it might topple over, but it could still stand. Now, let's say that somebody else walks by and kicks out another leg. Now you only have 2 legs, probably going to fall down. This is a perfect analogy for our belief system. It is the chair that we support, and those 4 legs are our supporting evidence. If you want to deter that belief, you just rattle one leg. That supporting evidence becomes feeble. We do that 2 times, 3 times. That belief system is now shattered. So I think that's a really good analogy for the supporting belief system. Another thing that you brought, go ahead, Bob.
I just want to say that really did hit me, Miles, what Miles said and what you just said, Keegan. What if I just changed it around and I believed that there is nothing to be afraid of, that I believed I was worthy? What would it be like if I believed I was worthy? Like Matt, I feel unworthy every minute of every day. What if I felt worthy? What if I just changed it? It's only a belief, and it's based on some past evidence. Well, I've got plenty of past evidence that shows that I am worthy. Why don't I use that as my belief system? And why can't I say I am deserving? Why? I mean, I have a choice. Either I am, and I have evidence for both. I'm sure we all have evidence for both. Why don't I just choose? I'm gonna write this on my mirror. I choose to be worthy. I choose to be deserving, and I choose to be courageous. I choose to believe that I am. That belief.
Why not you?
I'm sorry?
Why not you?
Why not me? Exactly. Well, and I want it for you too, and for all of us. Why not all of us? And getting back to the original point that Keegan made, being truly who we are, authentic. Why not? If we're truly authentic to ourselves, we are courageous, worthy. Uh-oh, Freudian slip. All right, let's stop.
Well, keep in mind that everything is perception and perspective. So just because you think you're worthy doesn't mean you're not. I mean, look at Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World. They always said we're not worthy, so, but ultimately, it is all mindset. And so sometimes we're our worst enemy. And I'm the first to admit that, I am like basically Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker every day. And so it's tough when you have that inner struggle and it's been with you your whole life. It's hard to sit there and break that pattern. And so like for example, I'm living in my friend's home. What did I do to deserve this? It just was circumstance that I was able to live here. And yes, I had the friendship of 20 years, but I didn't, do anything to earn this. It's the fact that, I had the friendship, but, I'm grateful to have a roof over my head, but what did I do to deserve it? So again, it's that feeling of guilt and unworthiness that also come down to it. But I believe it's how realistically you look at your life and you look at situations and the people around you and how you perceive them. And it's still an everyday struggle for me in that respect, but it's also, what is realistic and what is unrealistic. And so, sometimes we all need a pep talk. Sometimes we all need somebody to, be uplifting and to, have those affirmations that you are worthy, almost like Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. You are worth it, and so that's kind of what it is. And so really, you have to be able to sit there and have the clairvoyance to analyze your life, reflect, as Keegan had a past, session, and reevaluate: is this really the the surface level problem, or is it an inner, deeper problem that I'm not addressing?
Yeah, there's several points based on the discussion, and you guys are doing an awesome job, by the way. I think these are all very, very important elements to this, right? It's so cool to hear different people's thoughts here. But again, I think going back to that question of the what if, it's just such a simple way to change that perspective. Well, what if I do deserve this? What if I go out and I do achieve what I'm set out to achieve? What if? And so that also brings up the other fact that Bob was harping on, is that at the end of the day, it's our choice. It is our choice and our choice alone. And we're the only one that can make that decision. Nobody else can make it for us. We have to make that decision every single day. But it's our choice at the end of the day. Go ahead.
And the thing that, a little bit more than that, it's what Matt said at the very beginning of what his thing is. It's a mindset, and I get to choose it. So why am I choosing the one that's hurting me? Why choose they're both equally valid at this moment, whether I'm worthy or not. I don't know whether I'm worthy or not. Like you said, it's going to be on the outcome. Whether I fear or not is going to be on the outcome. So why choose the one that's going to limit me? Why? I don't know. I'm serious. I'm really just, for me, realizing this right in this moment, that I don't need to choose the one that says I'm unworthy. Let the universe decide whether I'm unworthy or not.
100%.
I don't have to make that decision. And yes, I have to face this every minute of every day. Every action I take, I always fear, I always feel unworthy. I'm serious about Bob Russo now, and I always feel undeserving. Yet I have to choose not to feel that way. And when I do, it's so much better. It just struck me.
I love it. And it's about winning one battle at a time. That's where people get overwhelmed, as they sit here and they go, oh, well, I've had these patterns for 20, 30 years. How am I going to change these? You don't need to change all of them in one day. You just need to win one battle. That's it. Just literally win one battle today. You go through this thought process. You recognize that you're feeding one of these three things: the doubt, fear, unworthiness, undeservingness. And you say, look, I'm making the choice in this moment to not fuel that negative construct. I would prefer to change the way I view it. And this goes back to the victim or victor mindset. It is, does this happen to me, or does this happen for me? Because guess what? It's going to happen either way. It's about the way that you look at it. If you look at it as happening for you and you see moments as that, you will always find the greatest lessons in life and the greatest opportunities, even in the biggest downfalls. I promise you. And this also goes back to the point of words and how powerful our words are. They dictate everything, and there's a whole different thing that I can go on down there. But I always really like these three questions. You guys have probably heard me say these before, but if you are in a moment and you're experiencing these things, the doubt, fear, guilt, unworthiness, inferiority, undeservingness, mindset, like Matt was saying, okay, well, how do we do that? We need to shift our perspective. A really good way to shift your perspective in the moment is ask yourself these three questions. Number one, what can I learn from this? In all moments, good or bad, because that's human construct, good or bad is human construct. In all moments, what can I learn from this? Guess what? Part of evolution and growing and developing your skill set is to constantly be learning. So if you see a moment and you just look at it for the facts, not for good or bad, you can learn from everything. Number two, what is the opportunity here? In good or bad, there's always an opportunity for something else. So when you seek the opportunity, now you can impact other people's lives. And then that leads us to the third question, is how can I use this to impact other people? In good or bad, imagine it like this. Let's say you go through a quote unquote bad scenario, you learn from it, and then you take that data and you change somebody else's life that's going through that exact thing right now. Now you've gone through, oh, well, this happened to me, to guess what? This happened for me because now I'm able to change somebody else's life. And again, like we talked about last time, when you stop focusing on what you don't have, when you stop focusing on your problems and you look outwardly on how you can solve other people's problems, you take that monkey off your back. Your problems become insignificant, especially when you start to see people that don't have a roof over their head. They don't have food, they don't have a family, then it really puts our life into perspective. So a lot of really good points in discussion, guys. The last part here, anything else that you guys want to touch on? Okay. This last part here is going to kind of pull everything we talked about in together. Habits are learned. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of repetition. It's in our DNA. All habits are learned. What happens is, again, we go through an experience, we create an emotional interpretation, and then we reinforce a conclusion that we've made. And then we go throughout life and we continue to operate on those belief systems, on those habits, and we do it over and over and over again. One of my favorite quotes, a great life is the summation of great years. Great years are the summation of great months, which are the summation of great weeks, great days, great hours, great minutes, great seconds. And that all starts with a decision. But if you make that one decision and you win that one battle today, just win one battle today and watch your confidence rise. And then you go to the next battle and you win that one and you win that one and you keep going. And before you know it, you've won the day. And then you wake up the next morning and you win that day and you keep on pushing forward. And before you know it, you've won a week. And then those weeks turn into those months and those months turn into that year. And then you look back a decade later and you go, I'm amazed at what I've been able to do. So you can pull the plug at any time. That's the amazing thing about habits is you can stop them by simply choosing not to reinforce them anymore. So here's a big factor. Most people believe their life is a result of exterior factors. They say, I've gone through this situation and this is my circumstance. Well, guess what? You made choices that put you in that circumstance. I'm not saying this to attack anybody. I've been homeless. When I was living in a car, eating out of trash cans, that was not circumstance. Those were choices that I made that led up to that. It wasn't just one thing that happened. You turn that around by stopping the reinforcement of those belief systems, right? And you got to realize that these are not exterior factors. These are the choices that we make. So it starts with that decision.
So
Any questions?
there's something,
Go ahead.
yeah, there's something that I read last night and it kept coming up while you were reading through that last portion right there. And it was the only judge of our character who has full context of our life dies with us in the end. And that was sort of to say, I think that sometimes, we're fearing that somebody else will catch us, and somebody else might figure out that we're unworthy or somebody might catch us for being inferior. But that doesn't matter. They don't have the full context of your being. They don't have full context of all the decisions that you've made. And touching on that locus of control, internal versus external locus of control, how we are creating all the circumstances that we find ourselves in, we're the only judge that recognizes all of that for ourselves in our own life. And so with that being said, how empowering could it be if you were actively making decisions to put yourself in the position where you could overcome these things? That's the thought. That's it. Just wanted to share it.
No, go ahead, Bob.
I'm sorry, that just, it hits home. Thank you so much, Miles. And it brings to a point that I've always tried, and to get to neutral on almost anything that happens, and not say it's good or bad, but to get to neutral so that I get to discern what happened and take control over it, right? So not letting anybody else judge my worthiness. I am worthy. Everything that happens or happened is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It's my experience, and how do I make the best of it is what I'm hearing. And that really is, that's both of those things are changing even the way that I look at things today, or reminding me that I don't let anybody else judge my worthiness, and I am worthy, and start from there. And I have complete control, and over the good and the bad, it's neutral. All of everything that happens is neutral, and I try not to, for me, just look at it just as something that happened. And like Keegan said, what can I learn from it? Those 3 points.
Exactly.
Just help me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's huge, Bob. It's that often we try to, and this comes back to the point before, is that whenever we look at something as good or bad, that is an emotional interpretation. That's not a fact. We're not looking at the facts. We're looking at our emotions. And do we support this or do we not support this, right? The other part is I really love what Jocko Willink said. It's taking full ownership. That's what we're talking about, right? It's that these things don't happen to us. Nobody comes and does this. It's not some random circumstance. We need to take ownership and make the decision to not live this way. It's that simple. It starts by giving yourself the power in making that choice, but it's your choice. Nobody else can choose it for you. And back to what you were saying, Miles, is that I heard this yesterday and I thought that it was gold. Our character determines all things, because what happens is there's going to be a breaking point, whether it's relational, business, spiritual, health, whatever it is. You're going to get to a breaking point, and if you don't have the character to sustain that, you're going to fall to the wayside. You have to create that character, and one of the best ways that you can analyze your character is by looking at your circle of influence. That's one of the quickest ways. So to wrap all of this up and to bring it back to the main point is that, look, we started out by saying there was an interview that was conducted. The top income earners stated that joy, full engagement, and confidence were the catalysts that helped them create the life of their dreams. That's what we're talking about here. So I challenge everybody on this call to just pick one area from today, just one. Don't try to tackle all three of these, but simply pick one. And I would probably look at this list and say, okay, which one is the lowest, right? And this may change based on the conversation. Pick the lowest one and focus there. Let's say it's joy. Okay, so what are the activities that help to create joy within your life? How can you gain more of those? How can you capture that authenticity and be yourself? If it's full engagement, how can you create a system where you're analyzing the sensory and emotional distractions that are preventing you from getting to your fullest capacity? Or if it's the confidence piece, can I focus on one of these three today? And if I see it come up, just one, if I see it come up, can I make that decision right then and there to not support that belief anymore? And if you just win that one battle, you go to the next one. But again, my challenge is to just pick one of these three categories, focus on that today, and see the results that it brings you by just changing a simple outcome. And again, you win one battle, and then you win the next, and you win the next, and you win the next. And you do this over and over and over again until at some point, you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just becomes your identity. All right, guys. So any last minute questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks before we close out?
All right, this is my opportunity to sit there and chime in.
Okay.
Yes, well, it has been interesting already. Today's session was extremely humbling for me, and it made me realize how far I still need to go in my life, and I have a lot of work ahead of me. See, I am very hard on myself, to the point where I make an 80-year-old on Viagra gels. So when you have that inner reflection, and it's always the self blame where everything is your fault because of your upbringing, it's hard to sit there and like have like a stain moment and break the cycle. So like the joy, I don't get joy from a lot of things. And so I have those 3 things on the list. That's what I'm going to work on, because I have my confidence here and there. I know how to engage. I mean, God knows we went over that one, but definitely the least, I guess the terminology I'm looking for is the least prevalent part of my life is the joy and happiness, and that has eluded me. So like you said, Keegan, well, guess what? Work on this one area and go from there. I'm going to start there first. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for sharing, Matt. That's great. Anybody else last minute thoughts or questions or concerns?
I just keep thinking about Matt being fully confident. I mean, fully engaged. Sorry, that was fully engaged. If you all remember when he is fully engaged, one of those activities that he's fully engaged in. Some things you just can't forget.
That's
Thank
right.
you, Matt.
That's right. Yeah, again, that full engagement when you
No,
are
I love you, Matt.
when you're
Let's all
fully
be Matt
engaged,
today.
right? It's that passion, it's that fire. And again, I love that quote is if you light yourself on fire, people will come to watch you burn. When you're fully engaged, there's just something contagious about it. People want more of it. All right, guys, any last minute questions before we close out? All right. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope you gained some insight. Again, don't forget, take one thing from today and just give it some energy, take some ownership over it. As always, I'm here for you. Let's crush the rest of our week. And hopefully you guys have an awesome Thanksgiving if I don't see you. See you
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks, Keegan. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Take
Hayden.
care.